So we're going to learn a couple of new techniques today. We're going to go over some mixes. I want to talk about, we're going to go over some mixes. We're going to go over some stuff. So let's take a look at this track this is the title track from my 2018 album, Carpe Noctem, which means seize the night in Latin. And I'm going to play you some of this. And what I want you, these are all audio tracks. Everything on here was programmed from MIDI. And I want to show you that MIDI can be unbelievably expressive with music that's not groove-based, right? So this is kind of like a neoclassical piece, sort of like an Arvo Pärt-ish kind of piece. So let me play a little bit of this and we'll talk about it. Okay, so that's the basic form of the piece, and then it just repeats. So a couple of things. In digital recording and comp, we work on sort of like object-based composition a lot, where we take pre-recorded materials, and especially in digital recording and comp 1, where you're recording things, getting them in the computer, and using them to assemble a piece of music. We talked about that in digital recording and comp 2 as well. And the idea here is that there is a significant amount of visual art by people like Picasso, Robert Rauschenberg, all sorts of really well known. Thank you, Jorge. Um, thank you, Casey. Where they get materials and they organize them on their canvas or in space to create, and then they treat those materials. Maybe they paint them a different color, or they put bleach on, or something. They do something to alter them a little bit, and they assemble them in a manner that creates a compelling narrative, right? Like, there's this thing about photography where you're not taking a picture of a dog, you're taking a picture of a dog doing something, right? There has to be some sort of activity, whether the dog, like the dog is looking off in the distance, or what it's something that like makes you ask a question, what's going on there, right? And so when they're assembling this materials, it a lot of times it makes you ask a question. So now if we want to transfer that to a piece of music like this, first of all, writing slow, out of tempo kind of music that's not incredibly busy, but is still effective, is a skill that if you want to be a media composer, that you really have to know how to do. In other words, how do you write a piece of music that can fit under a dialogue and add the emotional impact, can support or play against, depending upon the needs of the film, the psychology or the narrative of the film? How do you do that without calling attention to the music, right? How do you do that? That's very difficult, because it's not like you're just playing a C chord to an F chord. There's got to be something else going on, but not in a way that draws attention to itself, unless that's what is required for a particular moment. So this is a skill that if you want to be a media composer, that needs to be part of your toolkit, along with the big bombastic. Something like Expand 2 is a rompler, meaning that all the sounds are baked in. Now, I've been showing you some techniques about how to animate those sounds, right? But using the filter, by changing the overtones that you're hearing, by changing the envelope, the attack, and the decay, and volume, stuff like that. But there are so many techniques that an instrumentalist can play that you just can't sequence. So as time went on, and software-based samplers like Contact became more prevalent, and the amount of RAM got cheaper, companies started capturing performances rather than just individual notes. So in other words, instead of just having a long note, a short note, soft, medium, loud, super loud, they would capture longer performances that evolve over time. And these are things that you just can't sequence. So what these things become is they become objects, and you start working in how do you take these things that you would, if you were going to compose something for a real human to play, that you would write out the instructions through expression markings on your score. Well, how would you take these things and how would you use them creatively? And how would you use controllers to change those evolving sounds over time? And so this is very much like the object-based composition, but it's also combining strict traditional scoring ideas, because there's harmony in this piece I played for you. There's some counterpoint, and all of those good things, as well as evolving timbres, right? So, and what you can get when you add that with automation is a very sensitive piece like this. So let's go here and let's just look at a few things before we break this down a little bit more. So we look here on our timeline, it's 4/4, and I start off at 54 beats per minute. Measure 11, I have a measure of 2/4. I'm still at 56 beats a minute. Now, this A2 means that the A section repeats. I go up to 58 beats a minute. I make it a little bit faster. So I'm, the second time through, it's like I'm conducting it, right? A little bit faster. And then right here, I bring the tempo up to 64 beats per minute. I've got 2/4 and 4/4. And I'll talk about the time signature changes. Here I've got a measure of 5/4 and even faster at 66. The B section, 68 and back to 4/4. 70 beats per minute. A 3/4 and then slowing down. Now this is the A section in a third time. It's even faster. It's still not fast. It's 62 beats per minute. It's so 2/4 and 4/4. Right, just changing the tempo around. And you look, I've got all these different tempos. Now, what are the odd time signatures, the different time signatures for? Well, you can automate tempo, right? So that you can closely mimic what a conductor does in orchestral music when they are being rubato or a little bit free with the time. So if a conductor is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You can draw all that in. The problem with that for me is that if I've got echo or anything else going that's synced to the tempo, right? You start hearing weird artifacts in the tempo. So typically when I've played Broadway a lot, you'd be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, right? There'd be almost like a fermata or a pause over beat 4, which would make beat 4 actually be 2 beats long in actuality. So why not just make a measure of 2/4 or a measure of 1/4 or a measure of 5/4 where you've got that extra beat in there, right? So you add it into the time signature, and then you start getting that sort of push and pull, and where everything is sort of on a line. So in other words, it's like the time is on a string that's unbroken, that you can feel that linear tension. So 1, 2, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 1 and 2, right? So it's if I'm going to conduct and click eighth notes, right? See that? I paused on 4, and it was actually 2 beats. But that'll give you the sense of there being a little breath between 2 different sections. It'll achieve the same thing. If you do want to do that longer rallentano, you can simply draw that in to the tempo, and I'm going to go over that a little later on in the class. Okay, so now let's take a listen to how that actually works. All right, so let's go right here. Okay. So I'm going to take it from here, and then we're going to get into 2/4 right in this area here, and you'll see how it just adds a little breath before the next section starts. See that? right? It just gives a little, like, it's almost like I did a 2, 3, 4, and then in. So I'm making it more human, more conducted. So you can hear the harp is playing time, right? So this is the harp part. Let's see. Okay, why is that not doing that? Give me 1 second. Interesting. Why it's not soloing. Okay, let me do this right now. Four, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. A little faster. See how that really adds the time signature. Oh, Jorge. Yes, I did this with all in MIDI. All the time signature, everything was done with MIDI. I didn't use any elastic audio on this. All that was done with MIDI. And then when I mix, I render to audio, but that's an audio MIDI 2 thingy. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to go over that. Now let's take a look at, let me put this back to where it's supposed to be. Let's take a look under the hood here. Okay. You could see that there's all sorts of volume automation all over the place, right? And there's even in some spots, like right here. Let's see. See that? This line here, it's very tiny automation. Sometimes that's all you need. But that helps the music breathe, you know? And that's a piece like this needs to breathe. It needs to feel like it's flowing, like and that there's a string on multiple levels. There's a string with the tempo, there's a string with the volume where louder and softer and louder and softer. So it's almost like a slow beach wave, ocean wave, just unfolding over time. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else with this? Oh, let me play you some of these. Let's see if does it solo out? No, I don't. Why is it not soloing out? Oh, I see. Okay, great. I got it. I got it figured out. Yay. All right. That's this class here, track here. So it's incredibly soft violin playing with some, right? I didn't program that. I enhanced it by using all sorts of automation inside of Contact. But you can't do that. You have to capture the performance and then learn how to manipulate that. Here's another one. Right, very delicate tremolo. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's see. Cello. So all these these two tracks here are the cellos. And then you'll see it gets softer. Right, that's a kind of articulation that you can't really do with just a straight sample. And then now let's listen to some of this choir stuff. So with this, they have a word builder where you can choose which syllables you want in what order to play when you're playing the notes. Right? It's a little complicated. It takes you a while to jig it around and jerry rig it. And figure out all of the just how to make it sound good. But once you do, it's incredibly effective, right? And then you have something like this here, these high woodwinds going along with that. Like it's like the beginning of Petrushka by Stravinsky, right? And then you do have just the regular harp. You need something to ground it, right? You need something that's just a straight instrument to ground it with no crazy articulations and time, evolving timbres. So that's violins. Yeah. So, all right. So that's what I wanted to do with this piece here. Show you about some of this tempo stuff and the time, how time signatures can really help make a piece feel like it's being conducted as opposed to just being groove based. It really does add a level of sophistication and a humanity to a sequenced piece. And how I learned that, right, was I know the software very well, but I learned that on the job, playing in orchestras for 30 years, right? You just learn how it works, how it's put together. So those of you that are in the music department, when you're in orchestra, and you're not only when you're at rehearsals, just think about how everything is put together around you. It's an incredibly valuable lesson for you if you want to create music as well, because you'll hear how real instrumentalists play their instrument when they need to take a breath. I had this one graduate student like 10 years ago or 9 years ago where I was teaching film scoring, and he was very intelligent, and he actually thought he was teaching the class. It was very funny. Like I had another graduate student who I know was taking 21 credits in a semester and who did very well and was taking another class with me as well as film scoring. And that this person was like, one day she was like falling asleep in the class. And the student said, should I say something? I'm like, what are you talking about? You're not the teacher here. I don't have a problem with this. Good student gets A's every semester. Tired today. Not a big deal. Anyway, so the point of this is that the person handed in an MP3 of a piece they wrote for trumpet, and there was no breath for 90 seconds. Like it was literally a stream of notes for 90 seconds. And like this was a graduate student, right, studying music composition. And I'm thinking like, don't you know that the person has to take a breath and you need to write that into the music? It's just really weird. But these are things that you learn by having experience playing in the orchestra, or if you're singing in the choir. How are things phrased? When do people take breaths? You get to listen to all this interesting contrapuntal stuff that's 4 parts mostly. It's really a great education that can go along with any formal studies in music performance. No matter what style of music you played. I've told you the story of me playing in bar bands, learning how to play in a rhythm section every night, and how it gave me a heads up 30 years, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, man. Frightening. Getting old, man. All right, so let's move on to some stuff for today's lesson.